Have you ever walked past a machine and felt a strange, inexplicable presence? A feeling that you are being watched, not by a person, but by the object itself? We tell ourselves it's just our imagination, that steel, glass, and rubber are inanimate, incapable of thought, let alone intention. But what if, just once, we were wrong? What if a car rolled off an assembly line not just as a machine, but as something more? In 1958, at the height of America's chrome-plated love affair with the automobile, the Chrysler Corporation unleashed a vehicle that would etch itself into history for reasons far beyond its stunning design and formidable power. This was the Plymouth Fury, a name that, in hindsight, feels less like a marketing choice and more like a dire warning. Today, we are peeling back the layers of myth and metal to expose 13 genuinely bizarre and deeply unsettling facts about the 1958 Plymouth Fury. These are the stories whispered on the assembly line, documented in dusty police reports, and hidden in the footnotes of automotive history. This is the story of the car that seemed to have a life of its own. So buckle up, because the truth is far stranger and far more terrifying than the fiction it inspired. Fact 1. The assembly line's chilling nickname, the Watcher. In the roaring heart of Detroit's auto factories, workers gave affectionate nicknames to the cars they built. A Chevrolet Bel Air might be a Betty, a Ford Fairlane, a Fair Lady, but for the 1958 Plymouth Fury, there was no such warmth. They had a different name for it, spoken in hushed tones during late-night shifts, a name that carried a palpable sense of unease, the Watcher. It began as a subtle, creeping sensation at the Chrysler Jefferson Avenue plant. Workers started noticing something unnerving when they walked past the rows of newly completed Furies. They felt observed. There was no sound, no movement, just the intense, silent feeling of dozens of unseen eyes following them. One veteran mechanic wrote in a private journal, "The Furies are different. You stand alone with them in the dead of night, and it's not like being in a garage. It's like being in a kennel full of sleeping predators. You can't shake the feeling that they aren't truly asleep, just waiting." This feeling became so pervasive that a tangible dread settled over the Fury section of the line. Workers would take longer routes just to avoid it, and seasoned mechanics refused to work on a Fury alone. Management initially dismissed it as factory superstition, but then they saw the numbers. Productivity on the Fury line inexplicably plummeted as errors and strange mishaps skyrocketed. The plant manager, William Morrison, finally rearranged the assembly line to keep the Furies in constant motion. The official reason was efficiency, but the workers knew the truth. He didn't want those cars sitting still. He didn't want them waiting. He didn't want them watching. Fact 2. The terrifying muse, Stephen King's Christine, was born from real-life horror. The story of a possessed, murderous 1958 Plymouth Fury named Christine is Stephen King's most iconic automotive horror tale. But what if the novel wasn't entirely a product of his imagination? The seed of that story was planted by a series of chilling, real-life events. In 1978, King overheard two mechanics at a gas station in Boulder, Colorado, discussing a '58 Fury with a dark and bloody history. They claimed it had been responsible for the deaths of its last three owners in bizarre, violent accidents. Intrigued, King began to dig. He unearthed a disturbing pattern of tragedy linked to these cars across the country. Furies involved in fatal single-car crashes where drivers seemed to lose control, or cars that appeared to act on their own, with deadly results. King later admitted to embellishing these events for his novel, but he always insisted that the core, malevolent idea was not his own. There was a darkness surrounding those cars. He stated in a 1983 interview, "It was a string of coincidences just too perfect to be random." The truly bone-chilling part? After the novel became a cultural phenomenon, Fury owners came forward with their own stories that predated the book tales of radios turning on by themselves and cars moving to different parking spots overnight. Was it mass hysteria, or had King simply been the first to listen to the whispers that followed this car from the very beginning? Fact 3. The ghost in the machine. The Furies with impossible mileage. This is perhaps the single most inexplicable fact in the Fury saga, a phenomenon that defies logic, physics, and sanity. Between 1958 and 1960, a dozen or more Plymouth Furies were discovered with odometer readings that were physically impossible. These cars were accumulating miles they had never driven. The most infamous case involved a Fury in Michigan, purchased new in June 1958. 6 months later, its odometer read 72,000 miles. The owner, a mild-mannered accountant, swore he'd driven maybe 3,000 miles total. His family and neighbors confirmed the car was parked most of the time. Yet, the wear on the engine, tires, and suspension all perfectly matched the high mileage. It was as if the car had been leading a secret, parallel life, driving non-stop while it sat motionless. Another case in Florida involved a Fury with 120,000 miles after 1 year, owned by an elderly woman who barely drove. Investigators suspected fraud until they saw the dealer's meticulous maintenance records. 40 oil changes, one every 3,000 miles, all signed and dated with corresponding odometer readings. One bewildered investigator theorized the cars were somehow driving in another dimension. Chrysler quietly bought back several of these high-mileage anomalies for quality analysis. They were shipped to a secure facility and never seen again. Fact 4. The unnatural cure: paint that healed itself. Decades before modern science would even conceive of self-healing materials, the 1958 Plymouth Fury exhibited a property that should have been impossible. The car's buckskin beige paint appeared to have the uncanny ability to heal its own wounds. Owners noticed that minor scratches from shopping carts or bushes would simply vanish over time. The process was slow, taking weeks or months, but the evidence, documented in photographs, was irrefutable. It was a time-lapse record of a car literally mending its own skin. Paint chemists of the era were baffled. They analyzed samples and found a standard nitrocellulose lacquer. There was no chemical compound present that could account for this regenerative property. In 1958, it was pure science fiction. The phenomenon was specific only to the original factory paint. Any repainted Fury lost this strange ability. Whatever the secret was, it was baked into the car during its creation. A retired engineer later admitted they knew about it. "We couldn't explain it," he said, "so we didn't try." Fact 5. Echoes in the static, the radio that spoke to ghosts. The 1958 Fury was equipped with a state-of-the-art radio, a symbol of modern convenience. For many owners, it became a deeply unsettling portal to the past. The radios had a disturbing habit of picking up broadcasts that shouldn't exist. The reception was crystal clear, but the content was from another era. Big band music from the 1930 seconds, old-timey radio dramas, or news reports of events decades old. When owners tried to find the station again, they'd be met with only static. The phantom signal seemed to have triggers, appearing most often during electrical storms or on foggy nights. It was as if the car's electronics were a receiver for echoes of the past. Radio engineers declared this impossible, as radio waves don't linger, but the anecdotal evidence was overwhelming. The most terrifying experience happened to a man in New Mexico. On December 7, 1959, his Fury's radio played a panic news report about the attack on Pearl Harbor, exactly 18 years after the event. He was so shaken, he had the entire radio unit ripped out of the dashboard, preferring silence to the risk of hearing another ghost. Fact 6. The devil's tuning fork, the trim that sang in perfect pitch. Imagine driving down a quiet road at dusk. Over the rumble of your V8, you hear a faint, pure, musical tone emanating from the very bones of the car. This was the bizarre reality for many Fury owners, thanks to the car's distinctive gold anodized side trim. At a specific speed, almost always between 45 and 50 miles per hour, the trim would begin to sing. It wasn't a rattle or a whistle, it was a clean, sustained musical note. When Plymouth engineers investigated, they made a discovery that sent a shiver down their spines. At exactly 47 miles per hour, the trim generated a pure tone with a frequency of 440 Hz. To a musician, that number is instantly recognizable. It is the frequency of the musical note A above middle C, the exact pitch symphony orchestras use to tune their instruments. It was a coincidence so perfect, it felt intentional. Engineers tried to eliminate the defect, but failed. Plymouth's official explanation was harmonic wind resonance, a sterile term for a phenomenon that felt anything but. Fact 7. The soul of the machine, the infamous Fury smell. Every classic car has its own scent, but the 1958 Fury had the smell, an odor so distinct it became part of its legend. It would appear in the winter when the heater was turned on a strange, sweet, almost organic aroma. Some said it smelled like honey and hot metal. Others detected a faint floral note like wilting roses. Dealers were inundated with queries, but nothing could eradicate the smell. What made it truly weird was its ghostly inconsistency and its persistence. The smell was known to linger even after the entire interior of the car had been stripped out and replaced with brand new materials. Mechanics would gut a Fury to the bare metal, install a new cabin, and weeks later, the owner would report the return of that same unsettling smell. It was as if the scent wasn't coming from the materials, but from the very steel frame of the car itself, its unshakable, unforgettable essence. Fact 8. The golden veins trim that would bleed into the paint. The Fury's gold anodized aluminum trim was a luxurious feature meant to evoke glamour. For many owners, it became the source of a slow, creeping disfigurement. After a few months, the gold began to bleed. It would start as a faint golden halo on the paint where the metal met the bodywork. Over time, the golden tinge would spread, staining the paint in thin, web-like patterns. On some Furies, it looked like golden veins were growing through the car's finish. Plymouth's official line was atmospheric staining, but body shops discovered the discoloration had migrated through the clear coat and into the paint itself. Modern chemists believe it was a bizarre electrochemical reaction between the two materials. One owner in Florida documented his car's transformation, which he described as both beautiful and horrifying. Plymouth never admitted fault, but they quietly changed their trim and paint processes for the 1,959 models. Fact 9. A Predator's Poise, the car that settled like an animal. When a new car rolls off an assembly line, its weight settles onto its suspension. It's a simple process of physics, but the Plymouth Fury did it differently. Workers noticed that the Fury didn't settle like a machine, it settled like a living creature. Instead of a gradual, even lowering, the Fury would settle in distinct, deliberate movements. First, the front, a pause, then the rear, another pause. Then, most unnervingly, it would subtly shift its weight from side to side, like a predator adjusting its position for comfort before a hunt. Engineers were confounded. The Fury used the same basic suspension as the Plymouth Belvedere, yet behaved in this radically different way. They measured and calculated, but on paper, it should have been impossible. The assembly line workers had a simpler, more chilling explanation. "Those cars are thinking," one old-timer was quoted as saying. "They're deciding how they want to sit." Fact 10. Too fast for the rules. The outlaw banned from the racetrack. With a 290 horsepower V8, it wasn't long before Fury owners started showing up at local racetracks. That's when they discovered their car was, in a sense, too good. Track operators began to quietly and unofficially ban the 1,958 Plymouth Fury from competition. There was never a formal rule, but drivers would be turned away with vague excuses about technical specifications. The truth was, the Fury was an apex predator. In amateur stock classes, it was so dominant it was ruining the sport, making a mockery of the Fords and Chevys of the era. Rumors circulated that major sponsors from competing brands were pressuring track owners to exclude the Furies, unable to stand their cars being humiliated by a supposed luxury sedan. The Fury became an outlaw, a renegade too fast for the system to handle. Fact 11. An act of defiance. The police cars that fought back. Several police departments saw the 1,958 Fury as the perfect pursuit vehicle, a decision they would soon come to regret. The Furies they purchased began to exhibit a bizarre and dangerous streak of technological rebellion. The car's own mechanics were flawless, but the police equipment installed into them began to malfunction in ways that seemed deliberate. Officers reported radios cutting out during high-speed chases and sirens activating on their own in the middle of the night. Most bizarrely, one officer reported his siren playing its wail backwards, producing a descending, demonic tone. Engineers blamed electromagnetic interference, but that didn't explain why the same equipment worked fine in other cruisers. It was as if the Fury was actively rejecting the symbols of authority attached to it. By 1960, most police departments had quietly reassigned or sold their Furies. The car, it seemed, refused to be tamed. Fact 12. Birth of a monster. The assembly plant's bloody year. The curse of the Plymouth Fury began where it was made. During its 10-month production run, the Chrysler Jefferson Avenue plant experienced a horrifying spike in workplace accidents, a rate 3 times higher than any year before or since. These were serious, freak accidents. Workers fell from secure scaffolding, heavy tools malfunctioned with explosive force. In the most infamous incident, a heavy wrench was said to have flown from a worker's hand with impossible velocity, striking a colleague 20 feet away. It was described not as if it slipped, but as if it were thrown by an invisible, malevolent hand. Safety inspectors investigated repeatedly but could find no cause. The equipment was sound, the procedures up to code. The accidents just happened, almost exclusively on or near the Fury line. The plant manager, William Morrison, wrote in a private memo, "It's as if the machinery itself resents building these particular cars." The accident rate dropped back to normal the day the last 1,958 Fury rolled off the line. Morrison took an early retirement 6 months later. Fact 13. The missing pieces, a conspiracy of numbers. For our final fact, we return to the beginning. In an industry known for meticulous record-keeping, Plymouth's accounting for its flagship 1,958 Fury is a mess. The official claim is approximately 5,300 units were made. Approximately. To make matters worse, entire pages from the official production logs for the Fury are simply gone, vanished from the archives, while records for every other Plymouth model from that year are perfect. This anomaly has fueled decades of speculation. Was it just a clerical error, or something more deliberate? Conspiracy theorists argue the missing records are a cover-up, claiming so many strange incidents occurred during production that the company intentionally obscured the records to avoid liability. What secrets did those missing pages hold? We will likely never know. The fuzzy numbers are a fittingly enigmatic end to the story of a car born in shadow and mystery. A car that heals its own wounds, a radio that speaks with the voices of the dead, a machine that drives impossible distances in secret. A presence so unsettling it was known as the Watcher by the very men who built it. After hearing these stories, was the 1,958 Plymouth Fury just a masterfully engineered car surrounded by coincidence and folklore? Or was it something else? Did a unique combination of design and materials create a machine that blurred the line between inanimate object and living entity? The legend of the Fury endures because it speaks to a feeling we've all had that deep down, our machines might just have a ghost of their own. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever owned a car that seemed to have a personality? A vehicle that did things you couldn't explain? Share your own automotive ghost stories in the comments below. Your experience could be the next great mystery. And if this journey into the dark heart of automotive history fascinated you, please give this video a thumbs up and, most importantly, subscribe and ring that notification bell. We have so many more mysteries to explore. Thank you for watching, and the next time you're alone with your car in a dark garage, listen closely. You never know what you might hear.